Hey guys, this is Mrs. Barrow. I'm going to briefly go over the lesson we did yesterday for those of you that may have missed it or may have needed to be able to take better notes. So 4.0 is Ancient Greece, the introduction, exploring ancient Greece. Many ancient civilizations had myths. Myths are made up stories passed down by storytellers. The ancient Greeks were amazing storytellers. They invented myths to explain everything from the sun and the moon to the changing seasons and the weather. The ancient Greeks also invented many imaginary beasts in their myths. You might have heard of centaurs, fairies, fauns, and Pegasus. All these creatures and many more were thought up by ancient Greece. There was a reason the Greeks invented so many myths. They were interested in explaining the world around them. They studied the stars and the planets, also known as the science of astronomy. They believed that the Earth was at the center of the universe, and even though they were wrong, everyone thought they were right for 1,500 years. So it was a theory that worked out for a pretty long time. The Greeks also developed systems of philosophy and politics, which were very useful in the American government today, because not only is obviously politics an important part of it, but philosophy also helped us outline ethics in a lot of our businesses and our political systems. They even founded democracy, which is the system of government that we use in the United States today. Take a moment to view the slideshow. In it, you'll be introduced to two history time travelers, Mr. Lightfoot, your time travel agent, and Pavlos, a young boy from ancient Greece. They will help you get ready for the journey and will take you through this course with their amazing acting voices. Be prepared.
Welcome, students. I'm Mr. Lightfoot, your travel agent, but you probably already know that by now. Today I'm joined by a special guest, Pavlos from ancient Greece. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure I can, Mr. Lightfoot. Hello, everyone. My name is Pavlos. I live in the ancient city of Athens in Greece. Many people live and work in the hills around the city. It looks something like this.
Athens does look like a busy city. I see there is a big hill in the middle of the city with many large buildings and statues on it. What is that called?
Important.
We call it Acropolis. It's where we build temples and pray to our gods. The biggest, tallest building is called the Parthenon. It is dedicated to the goddess Athena, who watches over our city. We build statues to honor her.
It looks like the gods of your religion are very important to your culture.
Yes, they are. The gods shape our daily lives in every way. We like to tell their stories and myths by carving images on stone walls and by painting images on pottery. We also like to tell stories by performing plays. There is a huge outdoor theater here called an amphitheater. Twice a year, the greatest writers in the world will bring their plays to Athens for a competition. I like the funny plays more than the sad ones.
There seems to be a lot to explore in Greece, especially Athens. I'm excited to see what other interesting things we will learn about your culture. Are you ready to explore the history of ancient Greece?
I sure am.
Then let's get started.
Okay. So, introduction, the objectives of this unit. You will study the civilization of ancient Greece in this module. As you learn more about this culture, you may notice similarities and differences with other cultures around the world. This is important to keep in mind as you learn more about world history, especially because of cultural diffusion. When these cultures interact, they share ideas, especially when they're trading, and it enhances and changes their cultures. Keep track of your learning using the travel journal for each lesson. Print your travel journals at the end of each lesson. Keep them in a safe place and look back on them to help you complete assignments and help you study. If you don't have a printer and you download the travel journal, you can type into it, and that makes it a lot easier for you. Otherwise, if you are a person who likes to write and your parents have a printer, go ahead and print it out. If you'd rather write in a notebook, copy the questions and write in the notebook. Okay. The Greece checklist, I made a copy of it and I posted it in the announcements for April 1st if you really want it. It just kind of helps you stay organized so you know what you've completed and what your point values are. The pretest isn't required, so we can just ignore that. The ancient Greece checklist, there we go. Okay, that's exactly what I just said. Okay, so what do I have to do? It is time to take your ancient Greece pretest. Nope, it's not. So essentially each module will say week 1, week 2, week 3. This is week 1. Week 1 is due on Friday, and then week 2 is due next Friday, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so you should have your travel journal out right now so that you can take notes. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, something on the camera. 4.01, Rise of Ancient Greece, the objectives. What did ancient Greece look like? Okay, so we're going to read this in a super dramatic voice so you remember, okay? Waves crash against the rocky shores and steep cliffs. The sea is everywhere, sometimes calm and bright blue and other times dark and windswept. Many islands dot the landscape. Land is divided by hundreds of mountain valleys. Olive trees flourish. Sheep and goats range through the bush. So this is what ancient seafarers would have seen when they approached Greece. It was a land that harbored a great civilization. Here you'll discover the early peoples who lived on the islands and mainland Greece, the Minoans and the Mycenaeans and the Phoenicians. This recording is only going to go through the Mycenaeans. And then today, because I'm recording this the next day, we're going to go over a separate one for the Phoenicians because the Phoenicians are very important to this chapter, and I feel like that needs to be its own thing. You will understand how the geography affected these people. The contributions of these ancient people will also be covered. At the end of the lesson, you'll test your knowledge by answering multiple choice questions, and that's the last assignment for the week. The test is the last assignment. You only get 3 chances to take that test. So make sure you take very clear notes, that you study your notes, and then you take the test. So be aware. Okay. So after this, you'll be able to analyze the contributions of the Phoenicians and interpret how Greece's geography invites interaction with other regions and cultures. Okay, what is the geography of ancient Greece? The earliest civilizations arose in fertile river valleys. Irrigation helped the people in those areas to water their crops, which produced surpluses that fed large cities. The geography of Greece, however, is very different than river valley civilizations. So for those in the back who can't hear, ancient Greece is not a river valley civilization. It's one of the only civilizations we learn about that is not a river valley civilization because the city-states popped up around the Mediterranean Sea and were not river valley based, okay, for the future. Greece is on a peninsula like Florida, a piece of land that is nearly surrounded by water. The Mediterranean Sea surrounds Greece. This topographic map, which I'm going to scroll down and show you in a second, shows many of the mountains of Greece. The tall mountains create valleys that are isolated. There are also many rocky islands. Greece has a pleasant climate. The weather is not too cold or not too hot. The summers are dry, hot, and long, and it helped agriculture develop on the peninsula where they could grow agriculture. At first, the Greeks who lived in these areas did not create large empires like the Egyptians and the Persians. Rather, they created small city-states. These were areas separated from one another by mountains or waterways. Each city-state included the city and its surrounding area. These city-states were independent and often at war. So if you think about it, like if you're living in a town and you have your own government and stuff, and there's these people like 400 miles up a mountain on the other side, like it's kind of hard to interact with each other. So they developed their own unique cultures and their own unique governments, even though they were all part of Greece. And then they're also at war constantly because of the resources in Greece, and they needed resources. The Greeks often traveled by sea because the rugged land made it difficult. The coastline had many natural bays, creating harbors for ships. As a result, the people became skilled sailors and traders. Okay, so because they lived on the Mediterranean, they traded via sea most of the time. And they traded because other places had resources they didn't, because they had more fertile soil, because they had different metals and other raw materials. Remember, raw materials are stuff that you make things out of, like, because that's a really specific definition. So if we look here, yeah, it's got a couple of pictures on this map if you click through it. So how was life in ancient Greece affected by geography? It caused them to have their own unique city-states, and that they had their own cultures. It also made them seafaring traders. It also inspired them to have a lot of cultural diffusion from other places because they were trading with these people. And that's what happens when you trade, is you pick up on their culture and their ideas. Who were the Minoans? Okay, so there's Minoans, there's Mycenaeans. They're both M words. They're both Greek words, so it's kind of hard to figure out what's what sometimes on the test. But remember that the Minoans were on the island of Crete. The Minoans were peaceful trading people, okay? That's the highlight of this whole gist. Crete is the largest of the Greek islands. It is home to an early civilization known as the Minoans. The original name of the Minoans is unknown. They were renamed the Minoans by a British archaeologist who named them after King Minos, who is a mythological king. Minos was known for his love of gold. Thank you for your input. And so the Minoan civilization reached its greatest height between 1600 BCE and 1500 BCE. Minoan traders traveled across the Aegean world of Egypt and the Middle East. Okay, so the Minoan traders were trading with faraway lands, even other continents. The Aegean world is the area around the Aegean Sea. The Minoans grew grapes, grain, and olives and traded with the Greeks, Egyptians, and others in the Eastern Mediterranean region. Minoans traded with the Eastern Mediterranean region, picking up their cultures, their ideas, and their raw materials. Through contact with these cultures, the Minoans discovered many new ideas and technology. When they returned to Crete, they shared these new discoveries with their own people. For example, and this is a good example, they brought back and adapted writing and architecture to their own civilization. That sounds like something you should write. So their writing system and their architecture came from these other Eastern Mediterranean cultures. One type of building that may have come from their travels to Egypt was the labyrinth, also a good movie. A labyrinth is a complex passage that resembles a maze. A person who entered a labyrinth would have difficulty finding the exit and become trapped. Greek mythology tells of a labyrinth on Crete that was built to imprison a creature called the Minotaur. The Minotaur was said to be a half man, half bull. Cool side note that I found in my own personal reading. They've actually found ruins of a labyrinth on Crete. So whether or not a Minotaur existed, we can safely assume not, but they totally had a labyrinth there. In the center of Crete, on the island of Knossos, was a great palace. This huge complex had rooms for the royal family, banquet halls, storehouses, and workshops. Some areas were devoted to worship of the gods and goddesses. The palace was decorated with colorful paintings called frescoes. Sounds important. Frescoes, colorful paintings on walls. So something cool that I feel that this doesn't do justice is that the Palace of Knossos was roughly the size of a city. Like, if you've ever been to downtown Newport Richey, just imagine the whole thing was one giant building, and that's kind of like what Knossos was like. The Minoan civilization disappeared in 1400 BCE. Scholars are not sure why. Some believe a volcano erupted on a nearby island and destroyed the civilization. Others believe they were wiped out by an earthquake and a tidal wave. It is almost certain that the invaders, the Mycenaeans, played a part in its end. Remember, Minoans, peaceful traders, Mycenaeans. Slightly different. We're about to get there. You'll see why I'm reading in that voice. Who were the Mycenaeans? 1400 and 1200 BCE, the Mycenaeans from the Peloponnesian Peninsula emerged as the supreme power of the Aegean world. They were sea traders like the Minoans. They conquered the whole Greek mainland, okay? So they were taking people over left and right. Then they took over the island of Crete and the Minoans. The Mycenaeans learned the art of writing. The mountainous geography of Greece forced the Greeks to rely on the sea. This was because travel by land was difficult. Again, mountains 400 miles away. Nobody really wants to go do that on like a Saturday afternoon. It also encouraged the Greeks to develop contact with peoples on the southern and eastern coasts of the Mediterranean. Their contact with Egypt and Mesopotamia also influenced the Mycenaean culture. The customs and traders learned from these areas and were picked up by Greece later on. The Mycenaeans built city-states ruled by warrior kings, which is a callback to Mesopotamia. Warrior kings, you know, head of the ziggurat, okay. The ziggurats were actually, temples for their gods, but the warrior kings were the people that got to do the most stuff. These kings created great fortresses and wealthy tombs filled with fine gold artifacts. Eventually, the Mycenaean civilization began to decline. Sea raiders called the Dorians invaded them from the north. The Dorians also spoke Greek. The Mycenaean civilization ended around 1100 BCE. Over the next 3 centuries, Greek culture seemed to decline. Writing was lost, trade was slowed, wall painting and other fine arts stopped. Cities were abandoned. Such losses have caused historians to call this period the Greek Dark Ages. Small history side note. Those of you that have me for class know that I kept telling you over and over, a golden age is when art and science and architecture and all these good things come out. A dark age is when none of those things happen, okay? So like they're opposites. Golden age, art, architecture, beautiful, wonderful, flourishing, information. Dark age, who cares about information? So how did the geography of Greece limit and invite interaction with other civilizations? Remember, it limited it because the harsh landscape, the mountains, it was kind of hard to get there. It invited it because they're right there on the Mediterranean, you know? So limiting interaction, mountains, inviting interaction, Mediterranean Sea. And then we come to the Phoenicians. So this is the end of this little video, and hopefully today you'll be joining me for the lesson on the Phoenicians. I hope that you guys have a great day.